By 2026, millions of Americans could be living on the streets, and the signs are already everywhere. Cities like Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco are seeing homeless populations explode, with tents lining highways and parks. 1 in 4 Americans struggles to pay rent, and wages haven't kept up with skyrocketing housing costs for years. Every week, thousands of families are evicted and shelters are overflowing. Mental health crises, addiction, job losses, and climate disasters are all colliding to create a perfect storm. The question is, how did it get this far, and why isn't anyone stopping it? In this video, we'll uncover 10 shocking reasons behind America's homelessness tsunami, and some of them will leave you stunned. Number 1. Skyrocketing housing costs. Across the United States, housing prices have reached unprecedented levels, far outpacing wage growth for ordinary Americans. In major cities like San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles, the average rent now exceeds $3,000 per month, forcing many families to spend more than half of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. Studies show that when housing costs rise faster than wages, people are pushed into precarious living situations, often juggling multiple jobs or living in overcrowded apartments just to survive. The reality is harsh. Even small financial setbacks, a broken car, a medical bill, or temporary unemployment can trigger eviction and homelessness. For millions of Americans, affordable housing is virtually non-existent, and government programs meant to assist, like Section 8 or housing vouchers, are plagued by long waiting lists and bureaucratic hurdles. Cities report that the demand for low-income housing far exceeds supply, creating a situation where families who have worked hard for years are still unable to keep a home. Experts warn that unless housing markets stabilize, the number of people forced into the streets will continue to grow, feeding directly into the looming homelessness tsunami. The practical reality is chilling. Families often rely on short-term solutions like staying with relatives, moving from motel to motel, or crowding multiple households into a single apartment. But these are temporary fixes that cannot withstand the pressure of rising rents. Without immediate action to increase affordable housing stock and stabilize rental costs, more Americans will be left vulnerable to eviction and displacement. For those watching today, it's not just a statistic, it's a looming reality that could touch anyone in the middle class, highlighting just how fragile the dream of homeownership or stable housing has become in modern America. Number 2. Widening wealth gap. America is facing a growing wealth divide that is reshaping the very foundation of society. The top 1% now controls more wealth than the bottom 90% combined, creating an economic system where opportunities for the majority are shrinking. For millions of families, earning a stable income no longer guarantees security. Even with full-time jobs, many Americans struggle to cover basic expenses like rent, utilities, and food. This widening gap leaves countless households one crisis away from financial collapse, pushing them closer to the streets as everyday costs spiral out of control. The consequences of this inequality are far-reaching. Research shows that communities with extreme wealth gaps experience higher rates of eviction, homelessness, and social instability. Families living paycheck to paycheck are vulnerable to unexpected emergencies, from sudden medical bills to job losses, which can quickly spiral into a housing crisis. While the rich continue to amass wealth through investments, property, and tax advantages, ordinary Americans face a system stacked against them, where saving for a home or retirement has become nearly impossible. This growing divide doesn't just affect individuals, it undermines the stability of entire neighborhoods and cities. Middle-class families are squeezed out of urban centers, forced into overcrowded housing or long commutes from more affordable areas. Meanwhile, local governments struggle to provide essential services as tax bases shrink, leaving fewer resources to support vulnerable populations. Without structural change, this widening gap ensures that homelessness will continue to rise, feeding the tsunami that experts warn about. It's a stark reminder that economic inequality is not just a statistic, it is a daily reality that could impact millions of Americans, possibly including those who consider themselves financially stable today. Number 3. Mental health crisis. America is in the midst of a growing mental health crisis, one that directly fuels the rise of homelessness. Millions of people suffer from untreated depression, anxiety, PTSD, or bipolar disorder, and the lack of accessible, affordable mental health care leaves many without support. When mental health challenges go unaddressed, keeping a job, paying rent, or maintaining relationships becomes extremely difficult. In many cities, shelters report that a significant portion of the homeless population struggles with severe mental health issues, creating a vicious cycle that traps individuals on the streets for years. The system's shortcomings make the problem worse, while therapy, counseling, and psychiatric treatment can provide life-changing support. Costs are high. Waiting lists are long, and coverage is limited. Many people do not qualify for public assistance or cannot navigate the complex bureaucracy required to access care. This leaves millions vulnerable, especially during times of personal or financial crisis. Researchers warn that without significant intervention, the mental health gap will continue to expand, leaving more Americans at risk of falling into homelessness, regardless of their background or employment history. The human toll is staggering. Beyond numbers and statistics, mental health struggles lead to isolation, hopelessness, and desperation, making everyday survival a constant battle. Families, friends, and communities feel the ripple effects as loved ones struggle without the help they need. Addressing the mental health crisis isn't just a healthcare issue, it's a key step in preventing homelessness. Experts agree that improving access to mental health services, increasing funding for community programs, and reducing stigma can save thousands from losing their homes and dignity. Until then, the crisis continues to escalate, feeding the larger wave of homelessness threatening America by 2026. If this video opened your eyes, share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your perspective, your stories, and your solutions. Subscribe now. It's just one click, but it helps us continue bringing you these urgent, research-backed insights that could change lives. Number 4. Job loss and unemployment. The loss of stable employment is one of the most immediate triggers for homelessness, and the U.S. job market is showing alarming signs. Automation, outsourcing, and the gig economy have replaced countless full-time positions with temporary, low-paying jobs that offer little to no benefits. Families that once relied on steady incomes are now living paycheck to paycheck, with no safety net when an unexpected expense arises. Even middle-class households are vulnerable. One sudden job loss can quickly turn into missed rent, unpaid bills, and eviction. The problem is compounded by regional economic shifts. Cities that once thrived on manufacturing, retail, or energy jobs have seen massive closures, leaving workers with limited opportunities. Retraining programs exist but are often underfunded, slow, or inaccessible, forcing many to take low-wage work that barely covers living costs. Meanwhile, unemployment benefits have not kept pace with rising expenses, and the bureaucracy to claim assistance can leave desperate families waiting weeks or months without support. Experts warn that without intervention, more Americans will be pushed to the streets simply because they cannot find or maintain adequate employment. The social and emotional consequences are severe. Losing a job doesn't just strip people of income, it erodes confidence, independence, and stability. Families are forced to make impossible choices, skip meals, move into overcrowded apartments, or risk homelessness. Cities struggle to cope as shelters fill to capacity and local services are stretched thin. Job loss, especially during an economic downturn, is a domino effect that can devastate entire communities. Unless policymakers address wage stagnation, job security, and workforce support, the number of Americans facing homelessness will continue to rise, feeding the tsunami of displaced families projected by 2026. Number 5. Rising healthcare costs. For millions of Americans, medical bills are silently pushing families toward homelessness. Even those with insurance often face skyrocketing deductibles, co-pays, and uncovered treatments that can drain savings within months. A sudden illness, an accident, or chronic condition can turn a stable household into a financial crisis overnight. According to studies, medical debt is one of the leading causes of personal bankruptcy in the United States, and those bankruptcies frequently lead to housing instability or eviction. Families are forced to choose between life-saving treatments and keeping a roof over their heads, creating impossible dilemmas that no one should face. The system's gaps make the problem even worse. While some federal programs exist to assist low-income patients, access is limited and often delayed. Rural areas face additional challenges, with fewer hospitals, clinics, and mental health facilities available, forcing families to travel long distances at high costs. Meanwhile, prescription drug prices continue to climb, adding another layer of strain. Experts warn that without systemic reforms to control healthcare costs and expand coverage, millions more Americans will be pushed closer to homelessness, especially as the elderly and chronically ill struggle to keep pace with expenses that seem to rise faster than wages. The consequences ripple far beyond individual families. Communities are affected as people with untreated illnesses lose the ability to work, care for children, or participate fully in society. Shelters increasingly encounter residents struggling with both health issues and financial instability, highlighting the interconnected nature of economic and medical crises. The rising cost of healthcare is no longer just a personal challenge. It is a national threat, silently feeding the growing wave of homelessness. Unless urgent action is taken, healthcare debt will remain a major driver of displacement, leaving more Americans vulnerable to the streets by 2026. Number 6. Eviction epidemic. Across the United States, evictions are reaching unprecedented levels, leaving countless families with nowhere to go. Data shows that over 2 million Americans are forcibly removed from their homes each year, and the number is climbing as rent prices soar and tenant protections weaken. Eviction is not just about losing a place to live. It's a traumatic event that disrupts lives, separates families, and leaves lasting scars. For many, eviction marks the first step toward chronic homelessness, triggering a domino effect of instability that is incredibly difficult to reverse. The eviction process is often unfairly stacked against tenants. Landlords can initiate proceedings for even minor delays in payment, while legal assistance is scarce and costly. Low-income families frequently navigate the system alone, without understanding their rights or the resources available to them. Shelters and temporary housing programs are overwhelmed, and even when families manage to avoid the streets, they often end up in unsafe, overcrowded, or unstable living situations. The lack of affordable housing combined with these structural challenges ensures that once someone is at risk, it's incredibly hard to stay afloat. Evictions also have a ripple effect on communities and economies. Families uprooted from neighborhoods lose access to schools, jobs, and social networks, weakening community stability. Children experiencing eviction are more likely to struggle academically and face emotional trauma, while adults face higher stress levels and health risks. Cities see increasing pressure on shelters, public services, and emergency resources, highlighting how evictions are not just an individual crisis, they are a societal one. Without significant policy reforms and support programs to protect tenants and expand affordable housing, the eviction epidemic will continue to fuel America's homelessness tsunami, leaving millions vulnerable to losing their homes and dignity by 2026. Number 7. Lack of affordable housing. One of the most urgent drivers of homelessness in America is the critical shortage of affordable housing. Across major cities and smaller towns alike, rents are climbing faster than wages, leaving millions of families unable to secure safe, stable homes. Studies show that a growing number of households are spending more than 50% of their income on rent, a level that is unsustainable for long-term living. Even middle-income families are being forced out of neighborhoods they've lived in for years as skyrocketing housing costs push them to the margins of society. The lack of affordable housing is not just a numbers problem, it's a human one. Families are crowding into small apartments, doubling up with relatives, or living in substandard conditions to make ends meet. For many, temporary solutions quickly become permanent, and the risk of homelessness grows with each passing month. Experts warn that unless new affordable housing units are built and policies are introduced to control rent hikes, this crisis will intensify, leaving millions of Americans without a realistic place to call home. Vulnerable populations, including the elderly, disabled, and single-parent households, are especially at risk, as even modest rent increases can push them to the brink of displacement. The consequences ripple through entire communities. Neighborhoods experience instability, schools struggle with transient student populations, and local economies suffer as residents are forced to relocate far from their jobs, social networks, and support systems. Shelters and temporary housing programs are overwhelmed, and public services struggle to keep up with demand. The lack of affordable housing is a key factor in America's homelessness tsunami, acting as a pressure cooker that threatens to leave millions on the streets by 2026, without urgent and systemic reform. This crisis will continue to deepen, with devastating effects on both families and society as a whole. Number 8. Substance abuse epidemic. Substance abuse is a silent yet devastating contributor to America's rising homelessness crisis. Millions of individuals struggle with alcoholism, opioid addiction, and other drug dependencies, and the lack of accessible treatment programs leaves many trapped in a cycle of poverty and instability. Addiction often leads to job loss, financial ruin, and strained family relationships, which significantly increase the likelihood of losing one's home. Shelters and support services report that a large percentage of their residents are battling addiction, highlighting the direct link between substance abuse and homelessness. The problem is compounded by systemic shortcomings. While treatment programs exist, they are often underfunded, overcrowded, or inaccessible to those who need them most. Many individuals cannot afford rehabilitation or face long waiting lists, leaving them to cope with addiction on the streets. In addition, social stigma and criminalization prevent people from seeking help, creating a vicious cycle where addiction and homelessness feed each other. Experts warn that unless there is a major expansion of addiction treatment, mental health support, and harm reduction programs, substance abuse will continue to push thousands of Americans toward permanent homelessness. The human toll is profound. Addiction not only threatens physical health but also erodes self-esteem, social connections, and the ability to function in everyday life. Families are fractured, communities are destabilized, and local shelters are stretched to capacity. The combination of addiction and homelessness creates a perfect storm, leaving individuals vulnerable to violence, exposure, and long-term social exclusion. Addressing the substance abuse epidemic is not just a health issue, it is a critical step in preventing America's homelessness tsunami, ensuring that millions are not left to struggle on the streets by 2026. Immediate, comprehensive action could break this destructive cycle and save countless lives. Number 9. Mental health crisis. The mental health crisis in the United States is a growing force driving millions toward homelessness. Millions of Americans struggle with untreated conditions such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, yet access to adequate mental health care remains extremely limited. Without treatment, individuals often face challenges in maintaining employment, managing finances, or sustaining personal relationships. These struggles can lead to eviction, financial instability, and ultimately, life on the streets. Shelters increasingly report that a significant portion of residents are battling serious mental health conditions, underscoring the direct link between untreated mental illness and homelessness. Structural barriers make the problem worse. Mental health services are often expensive, underfunded, or geographically inaccessible, especially in rural areas. Even when programs exist, long wait times, complicated application processes, and stigma prevent many from getting help. Combined with social isolation and lack of community support, untreated mental illness can quickly escalate, creating a vicious cycle where homelessness worsens mental health, and worsening mental health worsens homelessness. Experts warn that without comprehensive mental health reform, millions more will be left vulnerable to homelessness in the coming years, amplifying the growing crisis across the nation. The human impact is devastating. Individuals experiencing homelessness and mental health challenges are at higher risk of violence, substance abuse, and chronic illness, while families face emotional strain and instability. Communities struggle to provide adequate resources, shelters are overwhelmed, and public systems are stretched beyond capacity. Addressing the mental health crisis is not just a medical necessity, it is a societal imperative. Without immediate action to expand mental health services, fund community support, and reduce stigma, the homelessness tsunami predicted by 2026 will sweep through American cities, leaving millions exposed to danger, despair, and displacement. Number 10. Job insecurity and wage stagnation. One of the most overlooked yet powerful drivers of America's homelessness crisis is job insecurity combined with stagnant wages. Millions of workers face temporary contracts, gig work, and unpredictable schedules, leaving them with little financial stability. Even full-time employees often struggle to keep up with rising costs of rent, utilities, and healthcare because wages have not kept pace with inflation. The result is a growing population of hardworking individuals who are just one missed paycheck away from losing their homes, creating a precarious situation that affects both individuals and families across the country. Economic shifts are worsening the problem. Automation, outsourcing, and market volatility are reducing opportunities for stable employment, particularly in sectors that once provided reliable middle-class incomes. For those earning minimum wage or slightly above, sudden expenses like car repairs, medical bills, or emergencies can push them into financial disaster. Without robust safety nets, unemployment benefits, or affordable housing options, these workers are increasingly vulnerable to eviction and homelessness. Experts warn that unless wages rise and job security improves, millions more Americans will find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty that is nearly impossible to escape. The consequences extend beyond personal hardship. Communities suffer as local economies lose stability, schools see rising numbers of children without permanent homes, and shelters become overwhelmed. The combination of unstable employment, low wages, and rising living costs acts as a powerful engine driving the homelessness tsunami predicted by 2026. Addressing this issue requires systemic change, including fair wages, better labor protections, and support for those navigating job instability. Without such action, hardworking Americans who do everything right could find themselves on the streets, demonstrating how deeply economic insecurity fuels this growing national crisis. The reality is stark. America is on the edge of a homelessness tsunami. From skyrocketing rents and widespread evictions to mental health struggles, substance abuse, and job insecurity, millions of individuals and families are being pushed closer to the streets. Every statistic represents a human life, a family struggling to survive, a child facing instability, a senior worried about losing their home. The interconnected nature of these issues means that one problem often triggers another, creating a vicious cycle of poverty, displacement, and despair. Shelters and public services are stretched to their limits, struggling to meet the growing demand. Communities are feeling the strain, and the social impact is profound. Without immediate attention and systemic change, the projections for 2026 are terrifying. Millions more Americans could find themselves without a safe place to sleep. This is not a distant problem. It is happening now, and the warning signs are everywhere. Recognizing the scale of this crisis is the first step in understanding how we, as a society, must respond before it becomes an unstoppable wave. Addressing America's homelessness crisis requires multi-layered solutions that tackle both the symptoms and root causes. First, expanding affordable housing is critical. Governments, nonprofits, and private developers must collaborate to build more housing units, control rent hikes, and provide emergency shelters for those at immediate risk. Stable housing forms the foundation for addressing other challenges like employment and mental health. Second, strengthening social support systems is essential. Access to mental health care, substance abuse treatment, and rehabilitation programs must be expanded nationwide. Funding for community-based initiatives, counseling, and outreach programs can help individuals break the cycle of addiction and mental illness that often leads to homelessness. Schools, workplaces, and local communities should play a proactive role in identifying vulnerable individuals and connecting them to resources before crises escalate. Third, economic reforms are necessary. Raising the minimum wage, ensuring job security, and implementing worker protections can prevent millions from falling into financial instability. Job training programs and skill development initiatives can empower at-risk populations to secure sustainable employment. Finally, policy changes and public awareness are vital. Governments must enforce eviction protections, provide rental assistance, and invest in preventive measures that keep families in their homes. At the same time, society must challenge stigma and advocate for inclusive solutions that recognize homelessness as a complex social issue, not a personal failure. By combining housing, healthcare, economic security, and policy reform, we can stop this looming tsunami, restore dignity to millions, and ensure that no American is left without a home by 2026. If this video opened your eyes to the scale of America's homelessness crisis, share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your perspective. Don't forget to watch our previous video for more urgent insights and support our work by subscribing. It's just one click, but it helps us keep bringing you the facts that matter.